Hey, Dosers, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Tracie. I'm the campus pastor at the San Marcos Escondido campus, and this week we are talking about facing our giants. And I want to tackle today facing our fears, or the fear of failure. You know, I know in my life that I have missed lots of opportunities, probably daily, that God has put in my path, and He has worked it out, and He wants me to participate in what it is that He's doing, but I have held back because I'm afraid of failing. And I think about, like, why is that? Why would I do that? And ultimately for me, I know that that's a pride issue. That's an underlying pride piece of what are people going to think? What happens if it doesn't go the way it's supposed to? What will people judge? How will it look? How will God look if I screw this up? And that is a fear of failure. But God tells us He makes us as a workmanship, and He has plans for us to work out in, and it says we should walk in those plans. He wants us to participate. And I think for some of us, though, maybe it's not the pride piece, but it's when you start thinking about tackling something or stepping into something God's called you to, it creates this anxiety or this worry of failure or what if. And in Proverbs, He addresses that for us, for all of us in that situation. In 29:25, it says, fearing human opinion disables us, but trusting in God protects us from that. So He knew that would be an issue, but He was like, no. Don't worry about what other people think. That's going to disable you. Trust me in the process. And when we start talking about giants and failures and defeat, we have to go to David, right? He had the perfect opportunity to step back and be like, no chance. I am so afraid of failing. But David gave us this great process that he went through. And honestly, I love it so much because it shows us that the word was applicable then for David, but it is also applicable today. If we take the description of what David did to get through to the end of the battle, we can apply those things as well. So let's look in 1 Samuel together and see what he did and look at that process. The first thing he did in verse 38 is he remembered God's faithfulness. He says in 38, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, He will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. So David looked back on God's faithfulness and said, He will do it again. He's going to be with me. And then he prepared. If you go on to 40, it says, then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and he put them in his shepherd's bag. He grabbed his sling with his hand, and he drew near. So he prepared. He got himself ready, and then he moved forward. Do you think David was afraid of failure or afraid? I'm pretty sure he was, and that's where we sit in that. But David just shows us, nope, you get yourself prepared, and you'll walk out in faith and in trusting God in what He's asking us to do. And then he goes on and he tells David what's going to happen. And I love at the end that he says, this isn't for my glory, but this is for God's glory. That's what's going to happen at the end of this. When God comes through, you are defeated. God is going to get the glory. And that is why God wants to use us and work in our lives. And so I just want to encourage us today. What is it that God's asking you to do? Be looking for the opportunity because He wants to use us. He tells us that. And then work through what David showed us. Work through that process of remembering God's faithfulness, preparing ourselves, and then stepping out in faith in those opportunities. God tells us, I'm never going to leave you. In your weakness, I will be your strength. I'm going to be right there and holding your hand. He tells us that through His word. So let's trust it today. Let's face our giants, and let's not be afraid of failure. We'll see you next time.